Kevin, your headline this morning is something that apparently the Prime Minister is going to address. What is this Hillsborough Law and how will it help people?
Yeah, morning, Susanna, morning, Richard. Yeah, the Hillsborough Law is a duty of candour on all public officials, so they have to be open and honest. So if there is another Hillsborough, remember 97 people were killed unlawfully in 1989 going to a football match, no one was ever prosecuted. It means that the police and so on, they have to be absolutely honest because there were cover-ups certainly in that. You look at the Grenfell inquiry just recently, it uncovered a lot of deceit and covering it up. And so if you're not honest, you don't have that duty of candour, you'll end up in jail. So it's an attempt to get public bodies to be straight and open. And when there is a disaster, there will be a team that goes in to represent the victims, the survivors, instead of leaving them to scramble and find lawyers to represent them.
Is this based on anything that any other countries operate? Do you know?
Yeah. I think other countries do, but it varies. But you set up your own bespoke British version here. We've seen time after time with disasters. All the warning signs were there, all the bells were sounding, all the lights were flashing, and nothing happened. But it's that duty of candour. Because, look, we're in Liverpool here at the Labour conference. It is absolutely astonishing that 97 people can die going to a football match that happened in 1989 for Liverpool, and no one is successfully prosecuted for that. And that is 97 people lost their lives. And we saw with the inquiry led by the Bishop that there was such a terrible cover-up. And you had, of course, the police in Downing Street at the time the Conservatives were in power, blaming the fans, claiming it was the supporters' fault. No, it wasn't. It was an old, dilapidated, unsafe stadium, and the police made fatal decisions over opening the gates to let people in, and they all went down at a central pen.
It's astonishing, isn't it, that we even think we need this law in the first place, because you would just expect there would be this duty of candour because they are public servants, they are paid out of the public purse. It is extraordinary. I mean, they're right to do it, but I just think it's a terrible reflection on Britain today that the government feels it has to do this because people have been so badly let down. And you can think about the blood scandal.
Yeah.
The post office scandal. I mean, if only there'd been a duty of candour over the post office scandal, we wouldn't have had to have a drama involving Mr Bates and ITV, because presumably this law of candour would have kicked in much sooner and we would have found out... Well, we still don't know what's gone on at the post office, do we? We still don't know the truth, but we do know that the postmasters and postmistresses were very badly let down and were lied about.
Toby Jones was here, wasn't he? Who played Mr Bates? Sir Alan Bates now. He's one of the celebs who've been around here at the Labour conference.
That's interesting.
Now, what about Freebiegate? At this point yesterday, we were getting ready to interview the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, which we duly went on to do after 8:30. And I think it's fair to say that it wasn't her happiest 10 minutes on live television. She was a bit on the ropes, to be honest, about
we noticed.
Yes, we didn't even have time to...
We noticed.
Oh, interesting. OK, so tell us what the reaction was from behind the scenes, Andrew.
Fury.
Oh, really?
The Chancellor was very cross. Yeah, she wanted to talk about her keynote speech yesterday. She wanted to talk about how awful the Tories were. She wanted to talk about how they were going to get to grips with COVID fraud. She did not want to be engaged by Freebiegate, the fact that she didn't quite, in my view, as you pointed out to her, declare properly the £7,500 of free clothes she got from Lord Ali in her register of interest.
She had a face like thunder. The rigid body position was telling you she was unhappy.
Well, the interesting thing is...
I think the clothes, her clothes weren't provided by Lord Ali. I think her clothes was a financial gift, wasn't it, from a friend,
but it was a
female
gift.
friend.
But, I mean, you know,
anyway,
these interviews...
She didn't pay for them.
These interviews follow their natural course, and if we get straight answers to questions, then we can move on to something else. The reason that we carried on that theme was because we didn't feel we were getting the right answers, so we had to push. And maybe we can ask her more political questions next time. But the interesting thing is that she went on then to do an Autocue-led speech at 12 o'clock that afternoon, where she made no reference at all to Giftgate, or however you want to categorise it, and looked much more confident. So what about What about Sir Keir? I mean, this whole thing started with him and his failure to properly declare gifts of dresses to his wife. That's where the story began. And, in a sense, it might end with him today because he has a chance to seal it. Do you think he'll say anything about it at all, or will he do what Rachel Reeves did in her speech yesterday and completely ignore it?
Richard, look, I'm on the left of British politics, and I would have been asking all those questions of a Tory if they'd taken clothes, and I'd ask them of a Labour person. Good. But all speeches at these conferences are autocue-led, as you put it. They don't memorise them, they don't use bits of paper anymore. I suspect he will have to reference it in some way, but he's not going to, the Prime Minister, he's not going to spend his entire speech on it. No. I would prefer him to have a mea culpa and say, look, we got some things wrong, we're going to put him right now. But he wants to be positive. He's speaking in a hall here, but he's really addressing the nation. Right. It'll be people watching on TV, looking online, listening on radio, going to read it later. That's what it will be. But the tone here has changed, and it changed yesterday. They were on the back foot, almost, you know, Rachel Reeves and that, let's face it, battering she got when you were asking about clothes and not being completely open. It seemed to change after that. I think it's gone on to more policies now, and the Prime Minister, after being all doom and gloom in the Rose Garden of Downing Street, he now wants to have that light at the end of the tunnel, which he used a fortnight ago at the Trades Union Congress, but he wants that light at the end of the tunnel not to be an onrushing train that's going to run the government over. He wants it to be light. I can show you, yep, there are problems. This is how I'm going to fix them and make life better for you, which is what politics should be all about.
It's also, you've got to remember, a key moment. Yeah. It's a key moment in this way, because we haven't had a Labour leader addressing a Labour conference as Prime Minister since 2009. Yeah. So this is a big moment, and he's got to get it right. So I think there'll be very little mea culpa. I think he's going to be talking about how he is going to rescue the country from the terrible 14 years of Tory rule. We're going to get a lot of that. 14 years of Tory rule.
Well, it was.
The black hole, that black hole. We're going to get a lot about the black hole. The black hole, of course, which has been made worse by the huge increase in pay rises in the public sector.
They're a hangover from your lot.
And of course, Kevin, during the Chancellor's speech yesterday, disaster in my view, and it's going to be a big problem for them. The Royal College of Nursing rejected the pay-off for a 5.5%, and they saw that the junior doctors got 22% over 2 years. They saw train drivers getting 15.5%.
Over 3 years, or maybe 5.
Yeah, but they want more of it, so we could now get West Streeting. The health sector thought it had all been sorted. It could be now. We've got industrial action with the nurses. Government isn't easy.
Yeah, there is an issue with the nurses, but let's just nail this lie all the time, that train drivers somehow got some huge amount. It was lower than inflation over those 3 years. It's just crazy. You can't
15%. Inflation
over 3 years. Inflation hit 11.1% in one of those years alone.
Kevin, inflation is now 2.2%.
These are the past
The train
years.
drivers who are on £64,000 a year have had a 15% pay rise over 3 years, and they're on £64,000 a year already. Do you wonder why the nurses who've got 5.5% from 5.5% from his lot, and the train drivers get 15.5%? Is it any wonder they've rejected the pay-off?
It was over 3 years when inflation was higher.
All his public sector mates are getting pay rises.
The problem is you're inaccurate and you're totally misrepresenting the position. That's the problem.
I'm now guilty of doing the same thing. We can't hear what you're saying. I want to let people know that I will be interviewing the Prime Minister after his speech. We will have that interview on Good Morning Britain tomorrow morning, so we'll be eagerly awaiting what he has to say, and whether, as you say, he's going to... You know, it does look like he's going to strike a more optimistic tone, because a couple of weeks ago he said things were going to get worse before they get better, and he also said he didn't want to discuss the upcoming budget because he didn't want to strike the fear of God into people. So the tone has definitely been gloomy, and people want to know that things are going to get better.
Do you think he regrets that Rose Garden press conference to some degree? Do you think he now, perhaps looking back on it, thinks that he went in a bit too hard on the gloom and doom, and that what he's doing today is a direct response to his own words 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Well, without a doubt, because the CBI, which welcomed, clearly wanted a Labour government to come in, I mean, just about everybody was saying this is too much doom, too much gloom. Effectively, I think the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were talking down the country, talking down the economy. Come on, we want some upbeat optimism. They won with a huge majority. When Blair got in 1997, he exuded optimism. And they've... OK, so they'll say... And that was after 18 years of Tory rule, and we had a lot of the Tories have screwed the economy, if you pardon that expression, wrecked the economy. But I think that there definitely is an acknowledgement that they have been too downbeat.
Yeah, you don't want to go back to Boris Johnson, who always pretended everything was going to be brilliant that he did when it wasn't. But you want a plan. People want hope. They want a bit of optimism. You get it during the campaign, and then all of a sudden he comes in and he just says, it's all disastrous. And yeah, the public finances he's inherited are very, very poor, very bad. You saw that national debt is now 100% of the economy. It hadn't been that since the 1960s, but you want to know he's a man with a plan.
Yeah.
And what that plan is to make life better for you. How are you going to have more money in your pocket? How are you going to improve health, education and tackle crime? That's what you want.
Is he going to address as well, in the speech, the elephant in the room about the winter fuel allowance, which is still the big issue here. You can't go into any fringe meeting, any bar here with people not talking about the political disaster that is the government's decision to take away the winter fuel allowance from 10 million pensioners.
Well,
I still haven't met an MP who privately supports it.
The Chancellor made no reference specifically about that yesterday. She made a general statement about the need to hang tough, basically, but she didn't specifically address that. Do you think that Starmer will specifically address the winter fuel allowance issue?
No. I may be surprised, but the three words that seem to be banned in all the speeches are winter, fuel and allowance. The three words you don't hear. The dog that doesn't bark. They'll talk about difficult decisions we didn't want to have to make, and we've been forced to make them. Let's move on, and down the line we'll make things better.
And I think if they had used if the Chancellor had used those three words in her speech yesterday, I think there would have been possibly jeers from the conference floor. That they don't want, because they want to try and stage manage this. They've not been very good at stage managing things, actually, since they've gone into power. All sorts of things have gone wrong. Noises off about Partygate and... Not Partygate, was it?
I don't know.
Freebie-gate, wallpaper...
You tell me what it is.
You know what I mean. So I don't think he's going to risk it, because he wants this to be... This is his big, triumphant return as the first Labour Prime Minister.
The OK
conference since 2009.
That OK from Susanna was a signal for you to stop, actually.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, well spotted, Kevin, well spotted.
You're getting the language.
You mentioned one of the things that people want fixing is crime. And, of course, the riots were one of the biggest criminal events that Labour government had to tackle almost as soon as they came into power. Now we understand that a 14-year-old boy who took part in the riots was so sternly told off by his parents that police and prosecutors decided they didn't need to take any further action. The Director of Public Prosecution said it was decided that, in his words, wrath had been visited on that child by his parents, who themselves marched him to the police station after realising he'd taken part in this disorder. And that was more effective than any punishment that the criminal justice system could deliver. The Director of Public Prosecution said, in contrast, other families had treated joining the disorder as a day out. And viewers will remember that one of the youngest defendants was a 12-year-old boy who was given a 12-month referral order after admitting violent disorder, whose mum had chosen to fly to Ibiza for a holiday at the time that he was in court, and she had to pay £1,200 compensation and go on a parenting course. What do you make of this, Andrew and Kevin? Because it seems that how you're brought up and how your parents behave affects how justice is doled out.
Yeah, but, you know, kids don't grow up wanting to riot, being bigots, being racists, wanting to beat other people up. It's their surroundings. And I really felt for the kid whose mum prioritised and thought it'd be better to go on a holiday than turning up in court to see their kid was all right. I mean, you really feel for it. A referral order is really an intervention by the authorities. The other kid is lucky his parents are intervening now, and as you said, march them to the police station. But you're right. You know, we're all, you know, I've got kids, got grandkids now. I was, you know, a kid myself, as we all were at some time, and your parents, your home life, the community you're in matters hugely. And I feel for those kids who have parents who don't care or even think, it'll be racist, bigoted, really violent language at home. And then there's some trouble, and they just go off you go. As if you're going to the pitches to play football. Why don't you go and throw some stones?
I think it also depends partly on the nature of the 14-year-old's involvement in the riots. I don't know what he did, how involved he was. If he was violent and abusive, then perhaps the authorities did need to get involved. But actually, if the parents can sort it, why not? And if you think about it, in the United States now, parents are being prosecuted now in some cases over the behaviour of their children, particularly in gun crimes. Yeah. And I actually think that's a welcome development. Because the kids get the guns from the parents.
But I have to say, as a one-time court reporter, as I think you guys probably were, we all were as we were going through our sort of journalistic early salad days, I can't remember, and since then reading what I read in the papers, I can't remember a case like this, where it was decided that parental wrath, in the words of the Director of Public Prosecution, parental wrath was a good alternative to state punishment. Does it set a precedent?
Yeah, but Richard, it wouldn't have got to court. The Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, headed by the Director of Public Prosecutions, a new one now, but it used to be Keir Starmer's job, will have just made the decision. There's a lot in the system where you have discretion. And sometimes it's, I remember when I was a kid, there was only once the police came to our door.
What had you done? What had you done?
We were milling around. We were milling around a railway line. We were milling around, and we went on the line a few times. It was like, I know, mad, daft things. I tell you, the police came, took our names, and later that day came round to speak to my parents. I was terrified of my parents on that, because, of course, they knew it was dangerous, it was wrong. I'd brought the police to their door. They saw that as a shame, and it was a fury. Now, of course, some people don't see it as a shame. They don't, and that is a factor. You've got to, you've got to realise if the cops come round and say your kid's done some wrong, if they've done some wrong, you don't have to go at the cops. You've got to change the behaviour of the kid. But no, I was respectable working class. My parents were furious. I think I would have taken a chance in court. It might have been easier if I could have kept it from my parents.
Andrew, any
it would have been the same with my parents, because they were very strict. But,
Any confessions from you,
No,
Andrew?
but I was too terrified of my parents. No, I was too terrified of my parents, let me tell you.
It was in Borstal, so, for those 10 years.
People don't even know what Borstal is now.
Precedent?
They don't know.
Andrew, do you think it's a good precedent?
I'm uneasy about it, actually, because I think sometimes you'd need the full force of the law to deter kids, and if other kids find out what their mate has got because perhaps they've got some form of judicial order against them, it's a deterrent. I'm not sure necessarily that parental wrath, what does that mean? I mean, was he slippered like I was as a child?
No, I don't think so.
So I'm uneasy about it.
No, but the poor kid who gets the referral order because his mum preferred going on holiday to going in court and seeing it was all right, that kid needs a lot of support. And now, whether that's through social workers, through school, getting mentors in, whatever it is, that kid deserves all that support, because, sadly, the kid isn't getting it from home.
No.
I have to say, I think in this particular case, this particular 14-year-old, I just get a sense of something of the wisdom of Solomon about this judgment. It's quite imaginative, it's quite thoughtful, and it's quite well argued through. Personally, I personally think it's a good thing.
Let's talk about Moira Stuart. Now, the reason we're talking about Moira Stuart is because she almost fell victim to a bank scam which, I mean, we know people who've fallen victim to this scam. She's decided to speak out because she was prevented from losing thousands of pounds only by the vigilance of a cashier at her bank. And she thought, she's 75 years old, she's been in news and journalism for decades, and she thought she was immune to being ripped off because, like so many of us, she thought she was very aware. But the fact of the matter is, she says there are psychological techniques which blinded her to what happened. So it started, she received a phone call. She was told someone had removed money from her account in collusion with staff at her local branch. She was told to go to another branch to resolve the problem. Fraudster stayed on the phone the whole time, told her it was an inside job that they'd uncovered and they were going to send some money from her account to find out what would happen.
You mean they were suggesting that someone in her branch was stealing her money?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Very brave of her to speak out. I mean, finally, she went to a bank physically, which sounds to me like a really sensible thing to do. Yeah. Actually go to a physical bank. Because the trouble is, Andrew and Kevin, when you're on the phone, you genuinely don't know who you're speaking to. And I know it happened to the husband of a reporter on this programme who genuinely thought he had done all the checks and ended up losing tens of thousands of pounds in this bank scam. And it just goes to show you can be in news for all of your life and still they think they can take advantage of you.
Yeah, they're very sophisticated, and but you just have to know, never discuss your bank account details, numbers or anything on the phone with anybody, just nobody. And I'm very pleased that she went to the branch, because she's lucky to find one, because the banks have closed so many blooming branches now. That's part of the problem. You have to do so much of it on the phone, and that is a real problem now with these banks, because they're closing all over the place. They're not providing the service they should.
Yeah, just don't give your details to anybody. The HMRC, the tax people don't ring up like this. The banks don't do that. It's not a referral order that people who do these scams deserve. They deserve a good kicking, because they're preying on a lot of people and ruining their lives. But
it just shows you, as somebody... and Moira Stuart's been around a long time, cynical journalist. She nearly fell for it.
But of course, she's honest, isn't it, there? And she respects authority. People, banks or figures of authority, rather, like the police are. And of course, one of the tricks they play is they give you a number and they say, right, put the phone down and ring, but they stay on the line.
Exactly.
They stay on the line. When you think you're running the number, they're still there.
The basic rule, the fundamental rule is... The fundamental rule is they will never call you to talk about these things. So don't get into a conversation at any level with your bank on the phone, because it isn't them. Can we finish with Prince Harry, guys, very quickly, in the last couple of minutes? We know that in Spare, Harry's autobiography, he admitted to taking drugs. And this seemingly got him potentially into trouble in terms of his visa in the US. And there's been a lot of speculation that because if you admit to doing drugs, you usually don't get citizenship and you don't get a permanent visa, that he might actually get kicked out. But a judge in America has now ruled that all of that should remain strictly private, that the negotiations and conversations about this are something which is none of our business publicly, and he's basically closed the book on it. But it doesn't mean that Harry's off the hook on this, does it?
No, and I suspect he's had an interview with taking lawyers along with the US Homeland Security or immigration, whoever does it. But that book's got him into huge trouble, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Both on admitting the drugs, the number of people he killed in Afghanistan, and then of course all the bad blood with his family.
If Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, he's actually raised this issue. So he won't care what a judge says or thinks. I imagine Trump will raise it again.
Yeah, but, some people will be concerned about the treatment of the two kids in the riots here. I just hope Harry Windsor has been treated as anybody else has, but I somehow suspect
not.
If he was a black man with a poorer background, he may be out on his ear, but because he's a royal, he's been treated favourably.
Well, Andrew, just jog our memories. What exactly?
I don't know, it's just fairness.
What exactly has Trump said about it? I know he has, but I can't quite recall exactly his tone. Was it quite threatening?
He's raised the fact... very critical, very threatening, because, of course, don't forget, Meghan Markle has been very critical of Donald Trump, so he says he thinks if Harry did lie on his visa application, he should be out. That's what the potentially next president of the United States thinks. But I don't think it's down to the president, although they do have huge power, of course.
And Meghan Markle isn't white, and Trump's a racist.
All right, guys.
He is. He's a straight racist.